Invisible authority. Silent mindfulness to command respect in career and life. You're talented, intelligent, hardworking, yet somehow the person next to you, someone you know isn't half as capable, keeps getting promoted, gets listened to in meetings, commands attention without saying much at all. Here's the truth they never taught you. Authority isn't earned through more effort. It's built through strategic silence. In the next hour, you'll discover the exact mindfulness practices, breathing techniques, and presence patterns that make people unconsciously respect you. Not through aggression, not through domination, through what we call invisible authority, the quiet power that makes rooms shift when you enter. The question isn't whether you're good enough. The question is, are you ready to let people see it? Invisible authority. Chapter 1. The illusion of visibility. Why everything you're doing to get noticed is backfiring. You're smart. You know this. I know this. But here's what you don't know. Your intelligence is being weaponized against you. Right now, in this moment, you're probably doing something that feels productive, something that feels like it's moving you forward. You're over-explaining, you're oversharing, you're over-delivering, and you think this is what gets you noticed. You think this is how you build authority. You're wrong. In fact, everything you're doing to get noticed is doing the exact opposite. It's lowering your status, it's broadcasting insecurity, and it's telling everyone around you that you don't believe in your own competence enough to let it speak for itself. Let me show you why. The proving trap. There's a manager I worked with, mid-level, competent, talented, ambitious. Let's call her Sarah. Every quarterly business review, Sarah would come prepared with extensive documentation, slides, talking points, backup slides. She'd explain every metric in detail, justify every decision she made that quarter, preemptively address potential criticisms. She'd talk for 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. By the end, executives were glazed over. They'd thank her, nod politely, and move on. Then came the VP. Same meeting, same stakes, different approach. The VP walks in, hands out a one-page summary, 90 seconds of speaking. Here's what we accomplished, here's what's next. Questions? Done. People leave that meeting energized. They remember what he said, they talk about his leadership, they respect him. Same organization, same meeting, two completely different results. Sarah couldn't figure it out, so she did what most people do when they're not getting the results they want. She worked harder. Next quarter, she added more detail, more data, more justification, more proof. Her status went down further. And the VP, he did less, said less, explained less. His status went up. This is the proving trap, and you're in it. You don't gain authority by filling silence. You gain it by controlling it. Write that down. Tattoo it somewhere you'll see it, because this is the foundation of everything that comes next. Why talking more actually lowers your status. Let's talk about neuroscience for a moment, not because it's interesting, though it is, but because it explains why you're doing this to yourself. When someone speaks excessively, when they fill silence, when they can't help but explain themselves, the human brain registers this as anxiety. Not consciously. Consciously, people might not even notice, but unconsciously, your nervous system is picking up on it, and your nervous system doesn't lie. Excessive speech is correlated with low confidence. It's correlated with anxiety. It's correlated with low status. This isn't opinion. This is neuroscience. Think about the most powerful people you know. Not the loudest, the most powerful. How much do they talk? Not much. CEOs in board meetings don't fill airtime. They make a point, they pause, they let it land. They don't feel compelled to defend it or elaborate on it. Junior staff? They talk constantly. They're anxious. They don't trust that their initial point was enough, so they keep talking. They keep adding. They keep hoping that if they say enough, somehow it will be right. That's the trap. More words equals more vulnerability. Less words equals more mystery. Mystery is magnetic. The neuroscience backs this up. When someone says less, your brain has to work harder to interpret what they mean. That extra cognitive effort creates deeper processing. Deeper processing creates stronger memory. Stronger memory creates more respect. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's biology. And here's what's worse. Your brain knows this. Somewhere deep in your nervous system, you understand that you're doing this to yourself. You know that when you're over-explaining, you're lowering your own status. But you keep doing it anyway. Why? Because silence feels dangerous. Silence feels like you're leaving the door open for someone to disagree with you. Silence feels like you're not doing enough, and doing enough is your currency, isn't it? You've always been the person who does more, who prepares more, who works harder. But authority isn't about doing more. Authority is about doing less and trusting more. Every time you fill silence with explanation, you're telling yourself a story. I'm not enough as I am. I need to prove myself. And every time you tell yourself that story, you train your nervous system to believe it. And every time your nervous system believes it, the people around you sense it. They don't respect you less because you're incompetent. They respect you less because you don't respect yourself enough to let your competence speak for itself.
More words equals more vulnerability. Less words equals more mystery. Mystery is magnetic. That's not a poetic statement. That's a biological reality. And once you understand it, you can never go back to over-explaining, because you'll know exactly what you're doing when you do it. The respect inverse. Here's a principle that will change everything. Respect flows towards those who don't desperately seek it. Let me say that again. Respect flows towards those who don't desperately seek it. Not towards the hardest workers, not towards the smartest people, not towards those with the best ideas. Towards those who don't desperately seek respect. This is the inverse. It's backward from everything you've been taught, but it's true. The moment you stop needing someone's approval is the moment you become worthy of it. The moment you stop trying to convince someone you're competent is when they actually believe you are. The moment you stop performing your authority is when you actually have it. This is your foundational mindset shift. Everything in this book builds on this. Everything. The breathing techniques, the pausing, the eye contact, none of it works if you don't understand this one principle. You have a choice. You can keep doing what you're doing, keep explaining, keep justifying, keep performing. Keep working harder and harder to be seen, to be valued, to be respected. Keep getting fewer results while exhausting yourself in the process. Or you can stop. You can stop seeking visibility and start embodying absence. What does that mean in practice? It means next Monday, in your next meeting, you're going to do something different. Someone's going to ask you a question. Your instinct will be to give a detailed answer. Your instinct will be to over-explain. Your instinct will be to perform. Instead, you're going to give a concise answer. One sentence, maybe two. Then you're going to stop talking. You're going to feel the urge to fill that silence. You're going to feel like you should say more. You're going to feel like you didn't explain well enough. Ignore that feeling. Let the silence sit. Let it be uncomfortable, because that discomfort, that's where change lives. Then do it again in your next meeting and your next one. Watch what happens. Watch how people respond differently. Watch how the conversation shifts. Watch how, when you say less, people listen more carefully. Watch how, when you don't explain yourself, you don't need to. That's the quick win. That's your immediate test of this principle. 3 meetings, 3 instances of silence, 3 times you refuse to over-explain. Then notice what's different. Notice who's listening more carefully. Notice who's asking follow-up questions with genuine curiosity rather than the glazed-over politeness they give to over-explainers. This is your proof. And once you have proof, belief comes easy. Stop performing visibility. Start embodying absence. You've been doing this backward. You've been thinking that visibility creates authority. It doesn't. Authority creates visibility.
And authority is built in silence, not in noise. It's built when you trust yourself enough to let your work speak for you. It's built when you care more about doing the right thing than about getting credit for doing the right thing. You have a choice. You always do. Keep proving or start being. The shift. Here's what's about to happen in your life. You're going to become less visible at first. You're going to say less in meetings. You're going to send fewer Slack messages. You're going to stop over-explaining your decisions, and for a moment, you're going to feel like you're disappearing. You're not. You're becoming invisible in the way that matters. You're becoming the person who doesn't need to be seen to be powerful. You're becoming the person whose silence commands more attention than other people's noise. That's when everything changes. You don't gain authority by filling silence. You gain it by controlling it. You're going to find that the people who matter start respecting you more. The opportunities that were going to people who talk more start coming to you. The conversations where you used to defend your ideas become conversations where people are defending their ideas to you. That's not accident. That's the respect inverse working. That's what happens when you stop seeking and start embodying. The path forward is clear. You've seen it in Sarah and the VP. You understand the neuroscience. You know the principle. Now it's about implementation. 3 meetings, 3 instances of silence, 3 tests of this truth. Then we move deeper. Because mastering your visibility is just the foundation. The real power comes when you master your presence at a deeper level. When you master your breath, when you master the pause, when you master the one tool that separates those who command rooms from those who ask permission to speak in them. That's Chapter 2, the breathing foundation, where authority stops being something you think about and starts being something you embody at a physiological level. Because silence is just the beginning. Control is everything. Invisible authority. Chapter 2, the breathing foundation. How breath control rewires your nervous system and projects quiet power. You're about to learn something that will change everything about how you show up in high-stakes moments, and it's not what you think. Most people believe authority comes from what you say. It doesn't. Most people believe it comes from how you look. It doesn't. Most people believe it comes from how prepared you are. It doesn't. Authority comes from how you breathe. This isn't metaphorical. This isn't some wellness guru talking about the energy of your breath. This is neuroscience. This is biology. This is your nervous system being hacked by something you've been doing wrong your entire life. And the moment you fix it, everything changes. Your breath betrays you. Think about the last high-stakes moment you were in. A presentation, a difficult conversation, a negotiation, a job interview. What happened to your breathing? You don't even have to answer. I know what happened. Your breathing got shallow, fast, tight, like your chest was clamping down, like you couldn't get a full breath. That's not random. That's not a coincidence. That's your nervous system going into fight or flight mode. And here's the problem. Your body doesn't know the difference between running from a predator and presenting to your boss. Both feel threatening. Both trigger the same response. Shallow breathing, elevated heart rate, tension in your shoulders and jaw. All of it designed to keep you alive in a physical threat. None of it designed to help you think clearly or command respect. And everyone in that room can sense it.
Your shallow breathing changes your voice. It becomes tight. It becomes higher. It becomes anxious. Your shallow breathing changes your body language. You become smaller. You contract. You shrink. Your shallow breathing changes your decision-making. You rush through your thoughts. You over-explain. You defend. You do everything we just talked about in Chapter 1. Shallow breathing is the root cause, and you don't even know you're doing it. Most high performers are chronically in a state of shallow breathing. You're so used to running on adrenaline, so used to being in fight or flight, that you don't even remember what calm feels like. You don't remember what a full breath feels like. That's the problem. But here's the solution, and it's simple. There's a specific breathing pattern. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 6 counts out. That's it. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. When you do this pattern, something happens. Your nervous system shifts. Your body triggers the parasympathetic response. That's the opposite of fight or flight. That's rest and digest. That's calm. That's certainty. It's not meditation. It's not woo. It's biology. Your vagus nerve is being stimulated. Your heart rate variability is shifting. Your entire nervous system is being recalibrated, all through breathing. Control your breath, control the room. It's biology, not belief. And here's what's remarkable. This shift happens in seconds, not minutes, seconds. 3 cycles of this breathing pattern and your nervous system is already calming down. By the time you're in that presentation, that negotiation, that difficult conversation, you're not in fight or flight anymore. You're in power. Your voice becomes deeper, steadier, more resonant. Your body language becomes easier, more expansive, more grounded. Your thinking becomes clearer. You don't feel the desperate need to over-explain. You don't feel the desperate need to defend yourself. You feel certain, and certainty is magnetic. I want you to try this right now, before you listen to the next section. Try it. Inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do that 3 times. Notice what happened. Notice your shoulders dropped. Notice your chest feels looser. Notice your mind got quieter. That's not placebo. That's your parasympathetic nervous system kicking in. That's the foundation of invisible authority, not thinking your way into confidence, breathing your way into it. Because your body believes the breath before your mind believes the affirmation. The pause that changes everything. Now that you understand breathing, we need to talk about what breathing makes possible: the pause. The pause is the most underutilized tool in career advancement, and it only works if your nervous system is calm enough to allow it. Think about what happens in most conversations. Someone asks you a question, your instinct is to jump in, to fill the space, to show that you're engaged, that you're thinking, that you're ready. So you answer immediately, you start talking, you don't leave any silence, and you lose all your power. The people who have power do something different. They get asked a question, they pause, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, maybe more. Then they speak. The pause itself communicates something. It communicates that you're not desperate to prove yourself, that you're not anxious to fill space, that what you're about to say is worth waiting for. In a salary negotiation, the pause is devastating. You make your ask, the other person responds with a lower number. Your instinct is to justify, to explain why you deserve more, to fill the silence with persuasion. Instead, you pause. You look them in the eye. You wait. Silence. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and that silence does more work than any argument you could make, because silence creates discomfort, and discomfort creates movement. They'll counter, they'll explain, they'll move closer to your number just to end the tension. You didn't argue your way there, you silenced your way there. In a presentation, the pause is the difference between information delivery and thought leadership. You make a statement, you pause, you let it land, then you move to the next point. When you do this, people actually process what you said. Their brain has time to anchor on it, to believe it, to remember it. When you don't pause, you're just moving information from your mouth to their ears. When you pause, you're creating belief. The pause is where power lives. And you can only do this if your breath is calm enough to hold it, because the pause is powered by breathing. You speak on the exhale, you pause on the inhale. It's a rhythm. Exhale, speak, pause, inhale. Exhale, speak, pause, inhale. Once you understand that pausing is just controlled breathing, it stops feeling forced, it stops feeling awkward.
It becomes natural. It becomes rhythm. In your next 3 meetings, I want you to practice this. Make a statement, then pause for at least 2 full seconds before saying anything else. Not 3 words of silence, 2 full seconds. That feels like an eternity when you're speaking. That's when you know it's working. Notice how people respond. Notice that they don't think you're weird. Notice that they take you more seriously. Notice that your statement has more weight. That's not accident. That's the pause working. And it only works because your breath is calm enough to hold it. Invisible vocal authority. Your voice is the first thing that communicates authority. Before you even say words, before people even understand the content of what you're saying, they're reading your voice. Is it steady? Is it confident? Is it certain? Or is it shaky? Is it quick? Is it anxious? Most people don't realize this. They think people are judging them on content. They're not. They're judging them on vocal quality, on what the voice communicates about the speaker's internal state. And vocal quality is entirely determined by breathing. When you breathe shallowly, your voice suffers. It becomes higher. It loses resonance. It sounds thin, fragile, uncertain, all the things that undermine authority. When you breathe deeply from your diaphragm, your voice transforms. It becomes deeper. It gains resonance. It sounds rich, grounded, certain, all the things that create authority. This is not an exaggeration. This is measurable. There are actual frequency changes in your voice based on how you're breathing, and those frequency changes are unconsciously interpreted by the listener's brain as indicators of confidence and status. Your voice is your first impression every single time you speak. Think about the most authoritative voice you know, someone you respect, someone whose voice carries weight. What do you notice? It's not loud. Loud is actually a sign of insecurity. It's steady, it's deep, it's resonant, it has space in it. That space is created by diaphragmatic breathing. That space is the difference between a rushed voice and a grounded voice.
Here's how you develop this. Every morning, before your day starts, spend 3 minutes on this simple exercise. Lie on your back. Put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Breathe through your nose. When you breathe in, your belly should expand, not your chest, your belly. This is diaphragmatic breathing. This is where real vocal authority comes from. Most people only chest breathe, shallow, quick, anxious. When you learn to belly breathe, everything changes. After a week of this, it becomes automatic. You'll find yourself belly breathing even when you're not thinking about it, and your voice will start to change. Deeper, more resonant, more authoritative. By the time you're in that meeting, that presentation, that negotiation, you're not just breathing from your diaphragm, you're speaking from it. And that changes everything about how people perceive you. Your voice is your first impression every single time you speak. So it matters. It matters a lot. The combination of these 3 elements is powerful. Breath control calms your nervous system. The pause demonstrates your confidence and forces processing. Vocal authority ensures that when you do speak, people listen. But here's the thing. They all depend on the same foundation, the same 4-4-6 breathing pattern, the same diaphragmatic practice, the same commitment to controlling your nervous system instead of being controlled by it. This is not something you learn and move on from. This is something you practice every morning, before every high-stakes moment, in every meeting, in every conversation that matters. Because invisible authority isn't built through one breakthrough moment, it's built through consistent practice, through repetition, through rewiring your nervous system so thoroughly that calm and certainty become your default state. You've now learned the foundation. You understand the principle. You know the techniques. What comes next is implementation. For the next week, I want you to do this. Every morning, 3 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing. Before every meeting, 3 cycles of 4-4-6 breathing. In every conversation, pause for at least 2 seconds after each statement. That's it. 3 simple practices. By the end of the week, you'll feel different. By the end of the month, people will see you different. Because you'll be different. You'll be the person who is in control of their nervous system. You'll be the person who doesn't fill silence out of anxiety. You'll be the person whose voice carries weight. That's not a small thing. That's the foundation of everything that comes next. So far, we've talked about what not to do. We've talked about what to do internally. But now we need to talk about how it all shows up externally, in the room, in the moment, in the way you look at people and the way you hold your body. That's Chapter 3, Eye Contact, Presence, and the Authority Gaze, where what's happening internally becomes undeniably visible to everyone around you. Because breath without presence is still just breathing. Presence without... Here's how you develop this. Every morning, before your day starts, spend 3 minutes on this simple exercise. Lie on your back. Put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Breathe through your nose. When you breathe in, your belly should expand, not your chest, your belly. This is diaphragmatic breathing. This is where real vocal authority comes from. Most people only chest breathe, shallow, quick, anxious. When you learn to belly breathe, everything changes. After a week of this, it becomes automatic. You'll find yourself belly breathing even when you're not thinking about it, and your voice will start to change, deeper, more resonant, more authoritative. By the time you're in that meeting, that presentation, that negotiation, you're not just breathing from your diaphragm, you're speaking from it. And that changes everything about how people perceive you. Your voice is your first impression every single time you speak. So it matters. It matters a lot. The combination of these 3 elements is powerful. Breath control calms your nervous system. The pause demonstrates your confidence and forces processing. Vocal authority ensures that when you do speak, people listen. But here's the thing. They all depend on the same foundation, the same 4-4-6 breathing pattern, the same diaphragmatic practice, the same commitment to controlling your nervous system instead of being controlled by it. This is not something you learn and move on from. This is something you practice every morning, before every high-stakes moment, in every meeting, in every conversation that matters. Because invisible authority isn't built through one breakthrough moment, it's built through consistent practice, through repetition, through rewiring your nervous system so thoroughly that calm and certainty become your default state. You've now learned the foundation. You understand the principle. You know the techniques. What comes next is implementation. For the next week, I want you to do this. Every morning, 3 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing. Before every meeting, 3 cycles of 4-4-6 breathing. In every conversation, pause for at least 2 seconds after each statement. That's it. 3 simple practices. By the end of the week, you'll feel different. By the end of the month, people will see you different. Because you'll be different. You'll be the person who is in control of their nervous system. You'll be the person who doesn't fill silence out of anxiety. You'll be the person whose voice carries weight. That's not a small thing. That's the foundation of everything that comes next. So far, we've talked about what not to do. We've talked about what to do internally. But now we need to talk about how it all shows up externally, in the room, in the moment, in the way you look at people and the way you hold your body. That's Chapter 3, Eye Contact, Presence, and the Authority Gaze, where what's happening internally becomes undeniably visible to everyone around you. Because breath without presence is still just breathing. Presence without breath is still just performing. But breath and presence together, that's invisible authority. And that's what changes everything. End Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Strategic Silence in High-Stakes Moments. When not to speak is your biggest career move. You now have the tools. You understand your breath. You understand the pause. You understand vocal authority. But none of that matters if you don't know when to deploy silence strategically. This is where the game changes. Most people think authority comes from having better arguments, from being smarter, from talking more convincingly. They think that if they just say the right thing at the right time, they'll win. They'll get the raise. They'll close the deal. They'll resolve the conflict. They lose every single time. The people who win aren't the ones with the best arguments. They're the ones who understand that silence is a weapon. Strategic silence, deployed at exactly the right moment, with full confidence that what you don't say will do more work than what you do say. That's what we're talking about today. Not just silence, strategic silence. Silence with purpose. Silence that changes outcomes. The 3 situations where silence wins. There are 3 specific moments in high-stakes situations where silence wins. Master these 3, and you'll change your entire career trajectory. Situation 1. After you've made your point. You're in a meeting. You present an idea. You make your case. You lay out the reasoning. Then you stop. You don't add more. You don't elaborate. You don't explain further. You just stop. What happens next is crucial. Your brain is going to scream at you to fill the silence, to add one more thing, to make sure they really understood, to convince them. That urge is your enemy. You're going to ignore it. You're going to let the silence sit. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, maybe longer. Here's what's happening in that silence. Their brain is processing. They're looking for holes in your argument, and when they can't find any, they're moving toward agreement. The moment you fill that silence with more words, you're doing damage. You're signaling that what you said wasn't enough. You're signaling doubt. You're inviting challenge. You're weakening your position. But if you hold the silence, something different happens. They have to respond, and the response is usually agreement or a genuine question. Not skepticism, not pushback, genuine engagement. I worked with a software engineer who was struggling to get his ideas approved in product meetings. He'd present, his manager would ask a question, he'd immediately start explaining more, adding context, providing justification. By the time he was done, his manager had already moved on to the next person's idea. I told him to try something different. Present, then silence. His manager asks a question. He answers briefly, then silence again. First meeting, he felt awkward. Second meeting, less awkward. Third meeting, his manager asked why he wasn't adding as much context. He said nothing. The manager continued. By week 3, his manager was defending his ideas in the broader product meeting. By month 1, 2 of his ideas had been approved. Nothing about his ideas changed. Nothing about his presentation changed. Only his silence changed. And that changed everything. Let them convince you of your own worth. That's when negotiation is over. Situation 2. After someone challenges you. You make a statement, someone disagrees. They say something contrary. Your instinct is to defend, to explain why you're right and they're wrong, to prove your point. Don't. Stay silent, look them in the eye, wait. This is harder than situation 1 because you're being directly opposed. Your nervous system wants to fight back. Your ego wants to defend itself. Everything in you wants to explain why they're wrong. That's the trap.
When you immediately defend, you're engaging in their frame. You're accepting that this is a debate, that you need to prove yourself, that their challenge deserves a response. When you stay silent, you're doing something different. You're suggesting that their challenge isn't even worth addressing. You're suggesting that you're so certain of your position that their doubt doesn't shake you. That silence is devastating. It's psychologically disorienting. They made a challenge and you didn't take the bait, so they have to fill the space. They have to justify their position. They have to convince you instead of you trying to convince them. I watched this happen in a salary negotiation. A woman asked for a raise. Her boss said the company didn't have the budget. Instead of explaining why she deserved it, she said nothing. She sat there, silent. Eye contact steady, just waiting. Within 10 seconds, her boss was filling the silence, was explaining how much he valued her, was talking about how they could find budget, was essentially negotiating against himself, all because she had the discipline to stay silent after his initial objection. She got the raise, a bigger one than she asked for. Let them convince you of your own worth. That's when the negotiation is over. Situation 3. After someone asks for your input. This is the most common scenario. Someone asks you a question.
in a meeting, in a one-on-one, in a group setting. Your instinct is to answer immediately, to show that you've been paying attention, to demonstrate your thoughts. Instead, pause. Someone asks, "What do you think?" You pause 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Then you answer, concisely. Then you pause again. You don't rush into the next statement. This is where the 4-4-6 breathing pattern becomes your best friend. You're not pausing because you don't know the answer. You're pausing because you're in control of the moment. You're taking a breath. You're being intentional. And that intentionality is read as authority. In a performance review, your manager asks what you want to focus on next quarter. Instead of immediately listing things, you pause. You actually think. Then you answer. Your pause and your considered answer create the impression that you're strategic, that you think deeply, that you're not reactive. In a conflict resolution scenario, someone expresses frustration with how you handled something. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you pause, you listen, you take a breath, then you respond thoughtfully. That pause has just changed you from defensive to receptive, from reactive to strategic. Every single time you pause before responding, you increase your perceived authority, because pause is the signal of thinking, and thinking is the signal of power. The discomfort is the tool. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to try these 3 situations, and it's going to feel awful. The silence will feel like it lasts forever. It will probably last 3 seconds. It will feel like 3 minutes. Your chest will tighten. Your brain will scream at you to fill it, to say something, anything. That's the point. Your discomfort in silence is proof that everyone else is too, and that's your advantage. Most people can't tolerate silence. They can't sit in that discomfort, so they fill it. They talk, they justify, they defend, they explain, they lose. You're going to do something different. You're going to sit in the discomfort, and you're going to win. The first time you do this, you'll feel like you're breaking social rules, like you're being rude, like something is wrong. That feeling is your anxiety talking. That feeling is the old pattern fighting to stay alive. Ignore it. By the 3rd time, the discomfort will start to feel normal. By the 10th time, you'll realize that the discomfort was always yours. The other person is uncomfortable too, but they don't know why. The silence becomes a tool because you're the only one who understands what's happening. They're experiencing discomfort and they don't know why. You're experiencing discomfort and you know exactly why. You're practicing, you're training, you're becoming the person who can sit in silence when others can't. And that person wins in every context, every single time. This discomfort is the crucible of authority. It's the place where people fold or thrive. It's where the mediocre people break and where the exceptional people get built. Your discomfort in silence is proof that everyone else is too, and that's your advantage. So expect it, prepare for it, don't avoid it, lean into it, because the moment you can hold silence without squirming, you've fundamentally changed the power dynamic in every conversation you're in. That's not small, that's everything. Silence as a filter. Here's something people don't talk about. When you become someone who speaks less, you start attracting different people. Not everyone deserves your words. Not everyone is worthy of your time. Not everyone should be getting your energy and attention. But you don't know who deserves what until you become selective. The moment you start deploying strategic silence, you start filtering. You speak less, so the people who get your words feel special. You're not giving your attention to everyone equally. You're giving it intentionally, to people who matter, to moments that matter. And people feel that. They feel honored to be heard. They feel like your words have weight because you don't waste them. And here's what happens next. The people who don't deserve your words start leaving your circle. The energy vampires, the people who complain constantly but never do anything, the people who waste your time with gossip and drama. They're not getting your attention anymore, so they gravitate toward people who will give it to them freely. You filter them out naturally, without being rude, without saying anything, just through the simple act of not engaging at their level. At the same time, you start attracting different people
people who respect discernment, people who value depth over breadth, people who understand that words matter. These people see your selective speech and they elevate you. They want to be in your circle. They want to be the people worthy of your words. Every word you don't speak is a barrier that separates you from mediocrity. This is one of the most underrated benefits of invisible authority. It's not just about winning negotiations and commanding meetings. It's about completely changing the quality of relationships and opportunities in your life. When you spoke to everyone equally, you attracted everyone equally. Average people, mediocre opportunities, energy-draining relationships. When you become selective, you attract the opposite. Exceptional people, high-quality opportunities, relationships that feed you instead of drain you. This happens naturally. You don't have to go and tell people you're filtering them out. You just speak less, and the sorting happens automatically.
I watched this happen with a woman who was constantly overwhelmed by social obligations. She had people constantly asking her to help with their projects, to listen to their problems, to be involved in their drama. She was exhausted. So she started practicing strategic silence. She said no more. She spoke less. She became more selective. Within 3 months, the people who were just using her had moved on to people who had more bandwidth. The people who actually valued her started showing up more. The quality of her relationships increased. Her stress decreased. Her energy increased. And she wasn't even trying. It was a natural result of becoming someone who values her own words. Every word you don't speak is a barrier that separates you from mediocrity. This is the real power of silence. It's not just a technique, it's a philosophy. It's a complete shift in how you move through the world. You stop broadcasting yourself and start protecting yourself. You stop being available to everyone and become precious to the people who matter. Implementation. You now have 3 specific situations to practice. You understand why discomfort is your signal of growth. You understand how silence filters your entire life. What comes next is execution. For the next 2 weeks, I want you to track your silence. Actually track it. Not in some formal way, just notice. In your next meeting, after you make a point, count to 3 before saying anything else. Notice what happens. In your next negotiation or difficult conversation, after someone challenges you, stay silent. Actually stay silent. See what they do. In your next one-on-one, when someone asks you a question, pause, breathe, then answer. Watch their face. Watch how they receive you. By the end of 2 weeks, you'll have enough data points to know this works. You won't need me to convince you. You won't need theory. You'll have proof. And proof changes everything. Because at that point, strategic silence isn't a technique you're trying. It's a tool you understand. It's a power you could. I watched this happen with a woman who was constantly overwhelmed by social obligations. She had people constantly asking her to help with their projects, to listen to their problems, to be involved in their drama. She was exhausted. So she started practicing strategic silence. She said no more. She spoke less. She became more selective. Within 3 months, the people who were just using her had moved on to people who had more bandwidth. The people who actually valued her started showing up more. The quality of her relationships increased. Her stress decreased. Her energy increased. And she wasn't even trying. It was a natural result of becoming someone who values her own words. Every word you don't speak is a barrier that separates you from mediocrity. This is the real power of silence. It's not just a technique, it's a philosophy. It's a complete shift in how you move through the world. You stop broadcasting yourself and start protecting yourself. You stop being available to everyone and become precious to the people who matter. Implementation. You now have 3 specific situations to practice. You understand why discomfort is your signal of growth. You understand how silence filters your entire life. What comes next is execution. For the next 2 weeks, I want you to track your silence. Actually track it. Not in some formal way, just notice. In your next meeting, after you make a point, count to 3 before saying anything else. Notice what happens. In your next negotiation or difficult conversation, after someone challenges you, stay silent. Actually stay silent. See what they do. In your next one-on-one, when someone asks you a question, pause, breathe, then answer. Watch their face. Watch how they receive you. By the end of 2 weeks, you'll have enough data points to know this works. You won't need me to convince you. You won't need theory. You'll have proof. And proof changes everything. Because at that point, strategic silence isn't a technique you're trying. It's a tool you understand. It's a power you possess, and you can use it consciously, deliberately, with full confidence that it works. The people who have authority don't get it from being smarter. They get it from being more disciplined, more willing to sit in discomfort, more willing to let others fill the space instead of doing it themselves. You're becoming that person. With every silent moment, with every pause, with every moment you choose your words instead of rushing them out. So far, you've mastered your breath. You've mastered the pause. You've mastered strategic silence. But all of this is happening internally. It's happening in your nervous system and your discipline. Now we need to talk about how it shows up externally, how your presence becomes visible, how the people around you sense your authority, not just from your silence, but from how you carry yourself when you're silent. That's Chapter 4, Eye Contact, Presence, and the Authority Gaze, where what's been building internally becomes undeniably apparent to everyone in the room. Because authority without visibility is still just internal discipline. Visibility without authority is just performance. But combine them and you become someone people instinctively respect. That's what's next. End Chapter 3. Invisible Authority. Chapter 4. Eye Contact, Presence, and the Authority Gaze. How intentional looking commands unconscious respect. You can breathe perfectly. You can pause strategically. You can deploy silence like a weapon, and none of it matters if you don't know how to look at people. Your eyes are communicating something right now, in this moment, even though I'm not physically in front of you. If I could see your eyes, I'd know whether you're truly listening or just hearing words. I'd know whether you're present or distracted. I'd know whether you believe what you're hearing or you're skeptical. That's how much your eyes matter. Most people think presence is something you feel. It's not. Presence is something you project, and it's projected entirely through your eyes. Everything else is secondary. Your words, your body, your breath, all of it is just amplification of what your eyes are already communicating. Master your eyes, and you master how people perceive you. The power of undivided attention. We live in a world where nobody is paying attention to anybody. You're in a meeting and everyone's looking at their phones. You're having a conversation and the other person is thinking about their next appointment. You're presenting and people are already mentally moving on to the next item on their agenda. Attention is the rarest currency, and the moment you give someone undivided attention, you become remarkable. Undivided attention means eye contact that's steady, not staring, not intense, not trying to burn a hole through someone's skull, just steady, relaxed, natural, like you're genuinely interested in what's in front of you. Combined with that eye contact is a relaxed face, no tension, no forced expression, just calmness, just presence, just the signal that you're not performing, you're not trying to be confident, you're just there. This combination does something neurologically. When someone meets your steady gaze without flinching, without looking away, their brain triggers a specific response. They sense security, they sense certainty, they sense authority. This isn't mystical, this is how the human brain evolved. When someone looks at you directly without breaking contact, you unconsciously interpret it as a sign that they're not afraid of you. They're not threatened by you. They're not trying to dominate you through force. They're just present. And presence combined with steady eye contact equals authority. Your eyes are your first weapon. Master them. Think about the last job interview you had. What determined whether you got the job? Not your resume. You wouldn't have been interviewed if your resume wasn't solid. Not your answers to questions. Those were probably similar to other candidates. It was whether the interviewer felt you were trustworthy, whether they sensed confidence, whether they believed you would show up and do the work.
All of that was determined in the first 30 seconds, mostly through your eyes. I worked with a candidate who was technically perfect for a role, strong background, right experience, good answers to interview questions, but she kept looking away, breaking eye contact, looking at her hands, looking at the floor. Every time she did that, she was unconsciously signaling anxiety, uncertainty, lack of confidence. She didn't get the job. The company hired someone slightly less qualified who had steady eye contact. Why? Because the hiring manager didn't trust that the first candidate would handle pressure, and they made that judgment entirely based on her eyes. That same candidate took a different approach in her next interview. Steady eye contact, relaxed face, full presence. She got that job. Same skill set, different eyes, different outcome.
In a one-on-one with your boss, your eyes are communicating whether you're genuinely engaged or just going through the motions. In a boardroom presentation, your eyes are communicating whether you believe in what you're saying. In a difficult conversation, your eyes are communicating whether you're going to hold your ground or back down. Most people don't know they're communicating all of this. They think they're just talking. They don't realize that the other person's brain decided what to believe before they finished their first sentence, based entirely on their eyes. So the first rule of eye contact is simple. Never look away first. When you're talking to someone, maintain steady eye contact. When they look away, you stay. When they look back, you're still there. This signals that you're secure enough to be seen, that you're not threatened by being perceived. Most people do the opposite. They hold eye contact for a moment, then look away, breaking the connection, signaling discomfort. The moment you consistently hold longer than the other person is willing to hold, you've established dominance. Not aggressive dominance, quiet dominance. That's the beginning of eye contact mastery. The 3-second rule. Now that you understand the power of eye contact, we need to talk about the exact mechanics, because there's a difference between healthy presence and creepy staring. The optimal eye contact pattern in professional settings. In a one-on-one with your boss, your eyes are communicating whether you're genuinely engaged or just going through the motions. In a boardroom presentation, your eyes are communicating whether you believe in what you're saying. In a difficult conversation, your eyes are communicating whether you're going to hold your ground or back down. Most people don't know they're communicating all of this. They think they're just talking. They don't realize that the other person's brain decided what to believe before they finished their first sentence, based entirely on their eyes. So the first rule of eye contact is simple. Never look away first. When you're talking to someone, maintain steady eye contact. When they look away, you stay. When they look back, you're still there. This signals that you're secure enough to be seen, that you're not threatened by being perceived. Most people do the opposite. They hold eye contact for a moment, then look away, breaking the connection, signaling discomfort. The moment you consistently hold longer than the other person is willing to hold, you've established dominance. Not aggressive dominance, quiet dominance. That's the beginning of eye contact mastery. The 3-second rule. Now that you understand the power of eye contact, we need to talk about the exact mechanics, because there's a difference between healthy presence and creepy staring. The optimal eye contact pattern in professional settings is 3 seconds, direct gaze, steady, calm, then a 1-second natural break. You're not dramatically looking away, you're just breaking the intensity slightly. Then back to 3 seconds. 3 seconds on, 1 second off. 3 seconds on, 1 second off. 3 seconds is the difference between confidence and intimidation. This pattern creates presence without aggression. You're signaling certainty, but you're not signaling threat. You're being present without being hostile, and that's the sweet spot. The 1-second break is crucial. If you stare for the entire conversation, it becomes uncomfortable. It becomes aggressive. People sense threat. They pull away. They stop trusting you.
But the 1-second break is so brief that it doesn't create the disconnection of normal eye contact patterns. It just removes the intensity momentarily, then you re-engage. This pattern works everywhere, in one-on-ones, in group meetings, in presentations, in negotiations. 3 seconds on, 1 second off. 3 seconds on, 1 second off. When you're presenting to a group, the pattern shifts slightly. You're not holding one person's gaze for 3 full seconds when there are 10 people in the room. Instead, you're moving your gaze around the room, making eye contact with different people for roughly 3 seconds each, then moving to the next person. But here's the key. You're not randomly scanning. You're intentionally locking. You're looking at one person for a full thought or sentence, then moving to the next one. This creates the impression that you're talking to everyone, but you're actually commanding each person individually. Most presenters do the opposite. They dart around, eyes bouncing from person to person, nervous energy, lack of grounding. The audience senses it. They don't trust the presenter. When you lock on someone for a full 3 seconds, you're forcing them to engage. You're making them part of your presentation. You're bringing them into your narrative. By the time you move to the next person, you've already activated that first person. 3 seconds is the difference between confidence and intimidation. Apply this pattern intentionally. In your next meeting, pick one person and lock eye contact for 3 full seconds while you're making a point, then move to the next person. Notice the difference in how they respond to you versus when you're being scattered. In your next presentation, instead of random scanning, intentionally lock on each section of the room for a full thought, then move. You'll feel more grounded, more controlled, and the audience will feel more engaged. This is a technique you can practice immediately. 3 seconds, 1 second break, 3 seconds. Once you start doing this consciously, it becomes automatic. Within a week, it will be your default pattern. Presence over performance. Here's where most people make a critical mistake. They think eye contact is a performance technique. They think they need to stare harder, to be more intense, to try to intimidate people with their gaze, to perform confidence. That's the trap, and it fails every time. Real authority doesn't perform, it simply is. The moment you start trying to look confident, you start looking like someone who doesn't feel confident. The moment you start looking intimidating, you start looking insecure. The moment you start performing, you start losing. Presence is different. Presence is what happens when you've completely released the need to convince anyone of anything. When you're so grounded in who you are and what you're doing that your face can just be neutral. Your eyes can just be open and aware. You're not trying to project anything. You're just being. And that's infinitely more powerful than any performance. Stop trying to look confident. Start being so grounded that confidence is irrelevant. The difference is internal. It's a shift in how you're showing up. Instead of, I need to convince this person that I'm competent through my eye contact, it becomes, I am competent, and whether this person believes is not my concern. That internal shift changes everything about your eyes. They become calmer, steadier, more grounded, because they're not trying to do anything. They're just witnessing. They're just present. From that place, the 3-second rule becomes effortless. The steady gaze becomes natural. The calm face becomes automatic. I worked with an executive who was intimidating to be around, not because he was aggressive, because he was constantly performing. His eyes were intense. His face was controlled. Everything about him was trying to project power. Then he started grounding. Before meetings, he'd spend 2 minutes just feeling his feet, just feeling present in his body. Within a week, people started saying he was easier to be around, more approachable, more trustworthy.
His actual behavior didn't change. His eye contact pattern didn't change. His words didn't change. Only his internal state changed. And that changed how people perceived him. Stop trying to look confident. Start being so grounded that confidence is irrelevant. This is the shift from performance to presence, and it's the most powerful shift you can make in how you show up. Integration. You now have 3 tools: the power of undivided attention, the 3-second rule for eye contact, the practice of grounding. Here's how they work together. You're in a meeting. Before the meeting, you ground. 30 seconds feeling your feet. His actual behavior didn't change. His eye contact pattern didn't change. His words didn't change. Only his internal state changed. And that changed how people perceived him. Stop trying to look confident. Start being so grounded that confidence is irrelevant. This is the shift from performance to presence, and it's the most powerful shift you can make in how you show up. Integration. You now have 3 tools: the power of undivided attention, the 3-second rule for eye contact, the practice of grounding. Here's how they work together. You're in a meeting. Before the meeting, you ground. 30 seconds feeling your feet. Then you walk in. You sit down. During the meeting, when someone asks you a question, you use the 3-second rule. 3 seconds direct gaze. 1 second natural break. 3 seconds direct gaze. Steady, calm, not performing. The combination of being grounded and maintaining the 3-second pattern creates undeniable presence. People sense it, they respond to it, they respect it. In a presentation, you ground before you start, then as you present, you intentionally lock on different people for full thoughts using the 3-second pattern. You're not trying to look confident, you're just present, you're just there, and that presence carries the entire presentation. In a negotiation, you ground before walking in, then during the negotiation, when they make an offer you don't like, you maintain steady eye contact using the 3-second pattern. You don't break, you don't perform, you just stay present, and that presence does the negotiating. The 3 pieces work together. Grounding creates the internal foundation, the 3-second rule creates the external pattern, undivided attention creates the mindset. Together, they create the authority gaze. This is where invisible authority becomes visible. This is where what's been building internally finally shows up externally. This is where people start treating you differently, not because you've said anything different, but because you're showing up differently. For the next week, I want you to focus on one thing: the 3-second rule. In every conversation, in every meeting, 3 seconds on, 1 second off. 3 seconds on, 1 second off. Don't add anything else, just this. By the end of the week, you'll notice people responding differently. They'll listen more carefully, they'll respect your words more, they'll trust your presence more. Not because you've done anything different, but because you're finally looking at them in a way that commands respect. You've now mastered your breath. You've mastered strategic silence. You've mastered your eyes and your presence. 3 internal disciplines combined with external execution. But all of this is still about managing your own nervous system and your own behavior. What happens when you encounter someone who's trying to get under your skin? What happens when someone is actively trying to undermine you or challenge your authority? That's when you need to understand the deepest principle underneath everything we've covered so far. That's when you need to stop performing visibility and understand why seeking validation is the death of authority. That's Chapter 5, The Silent Cost of Seeking Validation. Why your need for approval is blocking your authority. You've learned the mechanics. You know how to breathe. You know how to use silence. You know how to look at people. You're executing perfectly, and yet something is still off. People still don't fully respect you. Opportunities are still passing you by. You're still not getting the recognition you deserve. Here's why. You're still seeking validation. All of your breathing, all of your eye contact, all of your strategic silence, it's all being undermined by one single flaw. You still need people to approve of you. You still need them to confirm that you're doing well. You still need their external validation to feel like you're making progress. And the moment they sense that need, they stop respecting you. This is the invisible killer of authority. Not incompetence, not lack of skill, validation seeking. And most people don't even know they're doing it. Validation is a symptom, not a goal. Let me be direct.
When you seek validation, you're broadcasting insecurity. Not intentionally, not consciously, but unconsciously, unmistakably. You're telling everyone around you that you don't trust your own judgment, that you need external confirmation to feel like what you're doing matters, that you're not enough on your own. And the moment they sense that need, they respond with lower respect. Not higher, lower. Because respect flows towards people who don't need it. Respect flows towards people who are complete in themselves. There's a massive difference between an employee who does excellent work and constantly checks in asking how the boss perceives it versus an employee who does excellent work and reports results at scheduled intervals without needing feedback on how they're being perceived. The first employee is broadcasting need for approval, need for confirmation, need for reassurance. And the boss, even if they like the person, respects them less, because that need is a sign of insecurity. The second employee is broadcasting confidence that the work speaks for itself, confidence that results are the only feedback that matters, confidence that whether the boss likes them is irrelevant to whether the work is good. And the boss respects them more. The moment you stop needing their approval, you become worthy of it. Think about the most respected person you know. Do they ask for feedback constantly? Do they check in to see how people perceive them? Do they validate their own work through other people's opinions? No. They do their work, they report results, they move on, and everybody respects the hell out of them. Because they're not seeking, they're not needing, they're just working. I worked with a manager who was competent but insecure. She'd complete projects and immediately send emails asking how her boss thought they went. She'd make decisions and then second-guess them in front of her team. She'd present ideas and then immediately ask for feedback instead of letting them land. Her boss would give her positive feedback, genuinely positive, but internally the boss was thinking she doesn't believe in her own judgment. That internal assessment meant that when promotion time came, she was passed over for someone slightly less experienced but infinitely more confident in their own work.
A year later, that manager had a different approach. She did her work. She reported results. She didn't ask for validation. Her actual performance was the same, but her boss's perception of her completely shifted because she stopped broadcasting insecurity. The moment you stop needing their approval, you become worthy of it. Here's what's happening psychologically. When you seek validation, you're telling your own nervous system that you don't trust yourself, and your nervous system believes you. So it stays in a state of anxiety, waiting for external confirmation, needing reassurance. The moment you stop seeking validation, you tell your nervous system something different. You tell it that you trust your own judgment, and your nervous system relaxes, it settles, and that calmness becomes visible. People read that calmness as certainty. They interpret it as competence. They respond with respect. But none of it happens if you're still secretly seeking approval, because they sense the seeking. They sense the need underneath the performance, and need is the enemy of authority. The approval audit. Now that you understand the problem, we need to identify where you're doing it. Most people are not consciously aware that they're seeking validation. It's unconscious. It's habitual. It's been your default mode for so long that you don't even notice it anymore. So we need to make it visible. We need to audit it. Here's the exercise. Spend the next 3 days noticing where you seek validation. Not judging, not criticizing yourself, just noticing. Where do you check in with people asking for reassurance? Which people trigger the validation-seeking response? Which scenarios make you desperate for external confirmation? Which platforms are you using to broadcast your accomplishments, hoping for likes or comments? Write it down. Actually write it down, because what gets measured gets managed. You might notice that you're constantly checking in with your boss about performance. You might notice that you post about your accomplishments on social media and then refresh waiting for engagement. You might notice that you ask your partner for reassurance about your decisions. You might notice that you present ideas but then immediately deflate them by asking for criticism. These are your validation-seeking hotspots. These are the places where you're broadcasting insecurity.
Once you've identified them, the next step is the question. Before you seek validation in these moments, pause and ask yourself one thing. Is this real feedback or am I seeking reassurance? That's it. One question. Is this real feedback or am I seeking reassurance? Real feedback is specific. It's actionable. It's oriented toward actual improvement. Reassurance is emotional. It's oriented toward making you feel better. It's often not about the work at all. It's about needing someone to tell you that you're okay. Reassurance is a trap. Data is a tool. The moment you ask that question, you create a circuit breaker. You interrupt the automatic pattern, and in that interruption, you have a choice. You can choose to seek reassurance. Go ahead. But now you're choosing it consciously. You know exactly what you're doing. You're choosing to broadcast insecurity. Or you can choose differently. You can skip the reassurance and move on. You can choose to trust your own judgment. You can choose to let the work speak for itself. Most people, once they start asking this question, start choosing differently. Because the moment you see the validation seeking clearly, you don't want to keep doing it. It feels weak. It feels desperate. It feels like you're undermining your own authority. I worked with a woman who was constantly asking her mentor for validation on every decision. Her mentor would give positive feedback, but the woman never felt satisfied. She'd be back a week later asking again. The mentor finally told her, "You're not asking for feedback anymore. You're asking for reassurance." And reassurance never satisfies because it's not actually about the feedback. That one sentence changed everything. The woman started asking the question, is this real feedback or am I seeking reassurance? Most of the time, she was seeking reassurance, so she stopped asking. She started trusting her own judgment, and her mentor's respect for her increased tenfold. Reassurance is a trap. Data is a tool. For the next week, use this question before every validation-seeking moment. Is this real feedback or am I seeking reassurance? Track your answers. Notice how often the answer is reassurance. Notice how it feels when you choose not to seek it anyway. That's the audit. That's how you make invisible patterns visible. Indifference as a status move. Once you've stopped actively seeking validation, the next level is indifference. Not coldness, not rudeness, not dismissing people, genuine indifference to whether they like you or approve of you. The highest status people in any room are genuinely indifferent to whether you like them and their own path to excellence. They're not orbiting around your approval. They're not checking to see if you think they're cool. They're not adjusting their behavior based on whether you might respect them. They're just doing their thing. And if you respect them, great. If you don't, that's fine too. Either way, they're moving forward. This indifference is terrifying to most people because we've been taught our entire lives that we should care what other people think, that we should adjust ourselves for social acceptance, that we should be likable and pleasing. But that's how mediocre people behave. That's how people who never develop real authority behave. They're too busy trying to be liked to actually command respect. The highest status people have already figured out that likability and respect are different things. You can be likable and have zero respect. You can be disliked and have tremendous respect. If you have to choose, choose respect, because respect lasts. Likability is temporary. Care deeply about results. Care casually about opinions. This is the shift. You care deeply. You care about your work. You care about doing it excellently. You care about delivering value. You care about the actual outcomes. That's where your attention goes. Opinions? Not your concern. Whether someone likes you? Irrelevant. Whether someone approves of your choices? Not a factor in your decision-making. That doesn't mean you're arrogant. It means you're unburdened. You're not carrying around the weight of needing everyone to approve of you. You're not constantly monitoring how people perceive you. You're free to actually focus on what matters.
And that freedom is visible. People sense it, and they respect it. Because most people are so burdened by the need for approval that when they encounter someone who isn't, they instinctively respect them. The question is, can you cultivate that indifference without it being fake? Because people can sense fake indifference. They can sense when you're performing not caring while actually desperately caring. That's worse than just admitting you care. At least that has integrity. Real indifference comes from deciding that you're the boss of your own standards, not other people. You decide what good looks like. You decide what success means. You decide what's worth your time and energy. And then you execute on that. Whether people approve or not is outside the scope of your concern. This is a decision, not a feeling, not something you have to meditate into, just a decision. I am no longer orbiting around other people's approval. My standards matter more than their opinions. The moment you make that decision, everything shifts. Your decisions become faster, your execution becomes cleaner, your presence becomes clearer, because you're not second-guessing yourself based on external feedback anymore. I worked with a creative who was constantly modifying her ideas based on what she thought people wanted to hear. She was good, but she was playing small, always filtering, always checking whether her ideas would be approved before fully committing to them. Then she decided, I'm done. I'm going to do the work I believe in. If people don't like it, that's their choice, but I'm not going to water it down anymore. Her work got better immediately, not because the work itself changed, because she stopped holding back. She stopped filtering herself. She stopped caring what people thought and started caring about what was true. Her boss noticed immediately, not the work quality necessarily, the indifference, the confidence, the refusal to seek approval. And that's when the respect came. That's when real opportunities started showing up. Care deeply about results. Care casually about opinions. This is the foundation of lasting authority. Not the breathing, not the eye contact, not the silence. Those are all tools. But the foundation is this. You are the authority on your own life. You don't need external permission to believe in yourself.